You've been keeping this quiet for a while now. Not just from other people, but even from yourself, just a bit. You show up to work, you answer texts when you have to, and then you disappear. Maybe you go through the motions at dinner, say the right things, and then the moment you get a window of alone time, that's where the gambling lives. And you know something's off. You've known for a while, but there's a gap between knowing and doing anything about it. And right now, that gap feels insurmountable. What you might not realize is that the hiding isn't just a symptom. It's actually a part of what keeps you stuck. The secrecy, the isolation, the sense that nobody around you knows what's going on, that's the cordwood to a fire like gambling. If we haven't met, I'm Phil Shea, addictions counselor. I work specifically with men dealing with gambling and video game addiction. And today I want to show you something that reshaped how I think about recovery, a leadership model from the book Tribal Leadership. It was originally designed for workplace culture, not addiction. But when I started mapping it onto addiction, it broadened my understanding because it describes stage by stage exactly how addiction pulls people into isolation and what the climb back out can look like. The book breaks groups and people into 5 stages based on a core belief about life and where they fit in. Stage 1 is life sucks. Like, objectively, it sucks for everyone, and anyone saying otherwise is deluded or lying. This is the bottom. You're not chasing the rush anymore. You're trying to survive your own internal state. Gambling at this point isn't about fun or even money. It's about getting through the next minute, hour, or day. The world around you is falling apart in ways you might not even be fully tracking. Finances, relationships, your sense of who you are. You've stopped expecting much from yourself, or anyone else for that matter. Everything feels like damage control. Stage 2 is my life sucks. In other words, life can be good, but mine certainly isn't. This is where a lot of men quietly live for years. The shame is real, but private. You know that gambling is hurting you. You know it's made things worse, and yet you still can't stop because stopping would mean sitting in everything you've been using it to avoid. The anxiety, boredom, and low-grade dread that shows up when the distraction goes away. So you keep going. You tell yourself you're just stressed, just tired, just taking the edge off. Your world gets smaller and it's hardly noticed because the shrinking happens gradually. Stage 3 is I'm great and you're not. This one is sneaky and it's where a lot of men get stuck without realizing it. You still look functional, maybe you even look sharp. You might have a system, rules about how you gamble, limits you tell yourself you follow, and a way of separating yourself from the guys who really have a problem. The rationalization sounds like logic from the inside. You don't need help. You got it managed. You're just smarter about it than other people. This is where addiction hides behind pride and skill, which can hold you there for years because the suffering is real, but the story you're telling yourself keeps it invisible to everyone, including yourself. That transition out of stage 3 is where most men get stuck. It isn't rock bottom, nor is it a crisis. It's simply isolated competence. Still functioning and telling yourself that you're in control, all while being exhausted by how much energy it takes to keep that story going. If you're tired of managing this alone and you're ready to actually talk about what's going on, I do private one-on-one sessions for men dealing with gambling addiction. This isn't a group or a hotline or a program with a CBT worksheet, just a real conversation about what's actually happening to you and what a practical next step might look like. It's a free call to start to see if we're a good fit. The link is in the description. Stage 4 is we're great. This is where recovery starts to become real because the orientation shifts. You stop trying to white-knuckle everything alone. This part can feel strange if you've been isolated for a while, but you find that letting someone in doesn't destroy you. That honesty, even if it's just partial, even if it's just with one person, takes some of the weight off. Accountability stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like relief because you start to feel what it's like to not be in the throes of constant stress and struggle. To breathe easy for a minute allows you to see just how much you've been dealing with for so long. The addiction loses some of its grip because darkness is where addiction lives and you've started letting light in. Stage 5, the final stage, is that life is great. Now, listen, it's not that everything is perfect or that all your problems evaporate the second you stop gambling, but instead, it's no longer the organizing center of your life. You're not just running from relapse. No, instead you're building something, a routine, an identity, a relationship, or a community that actually asks something of you. You're becoming someone whose life is bigger than the addiction can constrain, which from where you may be now might sound like a fantasy. And yet, Men do get there. It takes time, and it's not linear, but it's certainly achievable. Here's the core of what tribal leadership taught me about addiction. The behavior pulls people down the ladder by replacing real connection with regulation. You feel something uncomfortable, and instead of turning toward another person for support, which is messy, uncertain, and sometimes full of conflict, you turn toward the bet. You turn toward gambling. It's something that can just numb you. It's always available, it doesn't judge you, and it definitely doesn't ask hard questions. But it also doesn't give you anything worthwhile that lasts. Recovery climbs back up by reversing that, replacing secrecy with honesty, even in small doses, overcoming lone wolf tendencies with something shared. I've said it before and I'll say it again. None of this has to be a dramatic confession or going to sit in a basement with a room full of strangers. It can start with one honest conversation. So, the question becomes, what kind of culture are you living in, and what kind of community are you building toward? Because addiction doesn't just affect your behavior. It affects your relationships, your self-image, the way you move through the world, and a recovery has to address those things. Or you're just white-knuckling it and waiting to slip. If you've been trying to beat this alone and you're exhausted and part of you is scared by how much space this has taken up in your life, all that means is that you've been fighting alone, likely with the wrong tools and without the right people behind you. That can change. I know so because it has changed for men in worse spots than you're in right now. And you don't have to wait until things are significantly worse before you let it. As always, I'm Phil Shea, Addictions Counselor. Have a great day.